Hello and welcome to Amateur Photographer Magazine's Last Resort, where we show you how to fix flaws in your digital images. Today I will be showing you how Adobe Photoshop's Lens Blur tool can be used to help conceal a cluttered background to draw attention back to the main subject of your image. As you can see in this image, the busy background in this harbour scene draws attention away from the boat in the foreground. The first thing we are going to do is switch to quick mask mode so that we can mask off the areas that we do not want to be affected when the lens blur is applied. Now we want to apply a gradient to the mask. This will allow the blur to fade down the image for a more realistic effect. In this example, I want the foreground and the boat to remain unaffected, so we will apply the gradient up to the line of the boats in the background. When dragging the line to produce the gradient, hold down the Shift key. This locks the line so the gradient is completely straight. Due to the fade of the gradient, some of the boat is only partially masked. To make sure that the opacity of the mask is 100% across the whole boat, I've set the colour of the brush tool to black and have painted over the whole boat. Now I'll exit out of quick mask mode, and as you can see the top half of the image is now selected with the bottom edge following around the contour of the boat. To apply the lens blur, go to Filter, Blur and then click on the lens blur filter. The most important settings are those found under the iris section. These settings replicate the various effects of the lens's aperture. So by adjusting the radius, it is like adjusting the size of the aperture. Increasing the radius creates a greater blur, whilst leaving it at 0 produces no lens blur at all. By changing the shape of the iris, it is as if you are changing the shape of the aperture blades. As you can see, switching between the different shape settings alters the shape of the outer focus areas. This is particularly noticeable in the specular highlights of the image. For a smooth shaped blur, I have chosen to use the octagon shaped iris and have also added some curvature to the aperture blades. Adjusting the specular highlights is quite self-explanatory, with the brightness increasing the strength of the highlight areas and the threshold altering the point at which the highlights become completely white. After exiting the lens blur filter, we can now see that the eyes draw much more to the boat in the foreground and the background is nicely blurred. However, the result is a little unrealistic as the foreground is still quite sharp. To solve this, I'm going to apply a very slight lens blur to the foreground of the image, just as I did previously. And there we have it. The final image is a marked improvement over the original, with the lens blur removing the distracting harbour boats, allowing the viewer to concentrate on the solitary boat in the foreground. Look out for more Amateur Photographer Magazine last resort techniques in the future. Don't forget to check out our website at www.amateurphotographer.co.uk.